Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Fireside Creators. I am your host, Reverend Dr. Sherry Palace. This week's show is with Laura Forehand and their book, Out into the Desert. If you are watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe. If you're on Facebook, you can register with StreamYard so we can see your name when you comment or have a question. Please keep all comments and questions related to the show topic, and remember, this is a safe space. I want to give a shout out to our top sponsors. Kirsten, Michelle, Ray, and Heidi, you all rock and enable the show to go on. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting it. I have all the options to do so at sherrypalace.com. Just go ahead and use the support tab. There are literally dozens of ways to show your support. Thank you in advance for supporting me, but more importantly, thanks for being here and welcoming us into your home. I appreciate you. Before we start the show, I want to mention a project that I started along with the help of our beloveds, Anna Garcia Lucas, Michelle Saveco, and Mike Zanker. It's called The Moment of Love. It costs nothing and only takes a moment of your time. Our goal is to cover the world with love. And all you have to do is let me know your location so I can add you to the map and share the movement with your friends and family. All of this is leading up to a Giving Love Away Day, which is GLAD, on November 6th, where our intention is to flood the world with love. I am super excited about this and hope that you will join us. Go to my website, sherrypalace.com, or look for the Facebook group, which is A Moment of Love. Spread love by spreading the word. Thank you in advance for your support and taking a moment to share the love. Okay, on with the show. Let's meet our guests. Karl actually had to work, so we are graced with Laura's presence. And I forgot to share my screen. There we go. Karl and Laura Forehand were in the ministry for 20 years. They went through deconstruction and then left organized religion. They are authors, speakers, and who founded the Desert Sanctuary. Their upcoming book, which actually released on the 15th, is Out into the Desert, is an honest evaluation of organized religion in the 21st century. Welcome, Laura. It's so good to see you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, and we see that Karl is in the audience listening. Hello, Karl. Fortunately for him, he started a new job, but unfortunately for us, he can't be here. But I am thrilled to have Laura and to talk about your new book. It's been out about a week.
Right.
I bet you guys are running around like crazy and promoting it, but let me go ahead. There we go. Yeah. There's the cover of it. I'm organized enough to have that.
There you go. Looks nice.
So let's just start with the basics. What was the precipice of this? How did you guys get started on this, and what invoked this?
Well, and I'll speak from my side of things. Karl was a pastor for 20 years, so 20 plus years really. So that made me a pastor's wife. And I really when Karl was felt like he was called into the ministry, I was like, okay. I mean, I really didn't have any, big high or big low about it. But being in the ministry for 20 years, I began to have a lot of questions, even while Karl was up in the pulpit. Things just didn't make sense to me all the time. I felt like there were contradictions. And then there was just a lot of, before we started, you were talking about love and spreading love to the world. And I felt like I could love, but I could love within parameters or within boundaries.
Conditional.
Yeah, and so and only certain people, you know what I mean? Like people that look like me and talk like me, and so that was very confusing to me. So I would say probably, oh gosh, I don't even know how long ago it was, and I may be totally off on this, but about 5 years ago, I had emotionally left the church before Karl actually stepped down from the ministry, and I was just very wounded. It had just been a lot of just emotional. It took an emotional toll on me, and
How did the congregation view
I'm
you
sorry.
leaving? How did the congregation view you leaving?
Um, well,
Or
it's
were they
really
even aware you checked out?
it's oh me yeah, I don't think they were really aware.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
they were, but they never really said anything to me. And that's the interesting thing in all of this is no, church is supposed to be a place of healing where we
Mhm.
can go, we believe to be healed because most people that walk into a church are wounded somehow, some way. And no one ever asked me, how are you truly doing? How are you really
Wow.
doing? Not even like when we would go to association type things, it was that put a smile on your face and fake it till you make it kind of thing. And I just felt like I just couldn't do that any longer. So I did kind of check out. But I left. And when Karl finally stepped down and left, we left our last church, you know, I was just so wounded and broken. And so what really led up to this is Karl's kind of always been a writer. And so that's how he processes his thoughts.
Yeah.
I was really struggling. And little did I know that writing down my experience and my lived experience, my thoughts was really going to be the beginning of my healing journey. So that's kind of, Karl was all about writing this and he asked me to come along with him. And I was very reluctant because I was very wounded. I was very hurt by the church. And I thought I was going to write it in a very angry place. And I didn't
Mhm.
want to write it in that angry place. But going back, Karl and I like to share that he had a stroke back in January. And so we were driving back and forth to Kansas City. And we had written this book 2 years ago and we reread it this year. And
Mm.
I was very surprised to find out that I really wasn't as angry as I thought I was. I think I was internally, but I'm grateful that it came out in such a way where I didn't sound so bitter. But I felt like I was honest in what my lived experience was inside the church for 20 plus years. So
I did a show a couple months ago on the importance of storytelling, and it
Mhm.
was so pertinent to deconstruction because
Yeah,
telling our stories and what we've been through and the trauma kind of releases that. It's therapeutic. It gets that out without the judgment of the church being founded on you.
right. Although I will say that there were some that, as soon as I began to share, were like, well, that's not our church and that's not our experience. And to that, I say, great. To that, I
Yeah.
say, that's wonderful. And feel extremely grateful that you didn't have that experience. However,
Yes.
as you're saying, stories are sacred and
Mhm.
we need to believe each other's stories, even if it's not our lived experience. So,
Yeah.
yeah. But that is the beginning of healing if we can find people that will sit with us in those stories and just listen.
And be there. I mean,
Right.
the irony is that was Jesus's niche, was his stories.
Right.
So you talk about in the book the fear, the shame, and the isolation. I mean, that's where you get the title, the isolation that comes from it. What were your experiences? Now, by the way, audience, go buy the book. It's on Amazon. Go buy the book.
Yeah. So for me, again, me personally, Um, there was a lot of isolation. There were a lot of expectations, both spoken and unspoken.
Mhm.
And I'm not really good at reading a room. If you need me to do something or act a certain way, you kind of have to like let me know that. And so there were just a lot of unwritten rules and
Mhm.
expectations. Um, and I kept feeling like I was falling short. And not only did I feel that, but it was validated, I guess, at
Yeah.
like all three of the churches. And so that did. And I was a mom raising young children at the time, and so just feeling like I was kind of alone in that. Carl was, off building, basically resurrecting these churches. These all three of these churches that he was pastor of were like on their last leg, dying churches, and they brought him in to resurrect or save the church, if you will. And he did a fantastic job with that. And he would even, I think admit this to a certain extent too, but at the price of, leaving me alone to raise um, three small children at the time. So that was very isolating. I felt very alone. Small churches means there's nobody on a, it's not a mega church where you can go and like leave your babies at a nursery
Yeah.
because they have a fully staffed nursery. If anybody was going to sit with her babies, it was going to be me. So, um, and then I would say one of the most hurtful parts for me, and I'm all like, I don't want people to misunderstand this because I'm all about women being in ministry and owning that, like owning, wherever you feel your place is in ministry. I have nothing against that. However, I will say that in my experience, it was the women of the church that were most hurtful to me. They were very controlling, and their way to kind of get to Carl was through me. That was
Mhm.
one way. So I would be I think they wanted me to be their mouthpiece. And then when I wasn't their mouthpiece, they would just completely like shun me, shut me out, ignore me, which again was very isolating. So those things,
Every church I've been to, by the way, has had that group.
okay, that's good to hear because again, I don't think we talk about these things enough. And
Yeah.
again, I felt like, okay, there must be something going on with me because, I hadn't heard these stories. I hadn't heard now since we've written the book, I have heard other people
Yeah.
kind of come out and say, that is part of my lived experience, if not my lived experience. And in a way, I'm like, I'm grateful that this book is out there for that, but it makes me sad in other ways because we haven't, as a church, we haven't done, I think, what has needed to be done, and that's bring
No.
healing to people.
Exactly.
Yeah. So there was just a lot of isolation and loneliness. And as far as the shame goes, I like to joke. At this point, it's a joke, but I say that I single handedly was in charge of bringing down Carl's ministry at all three churches because it was something that I happened to be involved in at our first church. It was, remember these are very very small churches in very very small towns. We were encouraged to go to a street dance to get to know people because
Mhm.
it's just a small town and that's how people get to know each other. And a slow country song came on, and Carl and I dance. We slow dance together. Nothing suggestive. I'm dancing with my husband. I didn't
Mhm.
pick some random guy out of the crowd and dance with him. And it was, you would have thought we, had done some,
Really?
yeah, because we danced. I mean, even though I mean,
Wow.
just to think about that, it really, and that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, that like we were encouraged to go to this.
Yeah.
Yet the very thing we did actually got us in trouble. And so you see how like that doesn't make sense in my head. And so
No.
this is where so much of like, this was the beginning of me kind of emotionally detaching myself from, being a pastor's wife and being part of the church, because it didn't make sense. And I never knew if the next thing I was going to do was going to be the thing that, totally blew the ministry up.
Oh,
At
wow.
our third church, my middle daughter, had turned 21, and she wanted to go to a winery. And I felt like really classy because I'm like,
Yeah.
she didn't want to go to a bar or anything like
Yeah.
that. She's like, "Oh, Mom, I want to have my first glass of wine with you, and let's go to a winery." And I just felt really like, kind of high society for a minute. Well, she took a picture and put it on Facebook, and I like to say that was the beginning of the end of our ministry at our third church, because
Wow.
I know. So it's crazy. Like, there's just stuff like that goes on, and I don't think, people maybe understand that is there's a lot of unwritten rules and expectations, and if you break them, it is like it's almost like there's no restoration. There's no way
Wow.
to
Which is
come
supposed
back.
to be the antithesis of the church.
Exactly. So you see what I'm talking about when I say there's like these complete opposite things going on in my head. And, which caused me to even question, like, Jesus and God and just
Oh, of course.
all of that, So yeah. So that's a lot of the isolation, the shame. It was
Well, and
just
especially in a small church. I mean, as you're talking, I keep thinking of the last mega church that I went to, and they were called the Hens.
hmm,
And it was a group of women, and it would be like, oh, they're clacking again. Oh, the hens are clacking again. And the pastor was so fed up with them that he preached a sermon about being holier than thou and worshiping the Bible, and they all got up and walked out. And
oh my,
there was about 1,000 people there, and you heard some go quack, quack, quack. But at least there were enough to put them in check to say, you can't be treating people this way. You can't be doing
wow.
this, along with the pastor. Um, but yeah, like I said, every single church I've been to since I was a child has had that group.
Right.
And
And
it is so off-putting. It's
yeah,
so cliquish.
yeah,
It's exactly the opposite of what the church is supposed to be.
right, right. Exactly. And I just felt like this was such a strong, and every single church, that was such a strong group of women. And it was interesting too, because the women were very strong, but the husbands were very quiet.
Mhm.
And not that, like, I don't want to like stifle anybody's voice or
Of
anything like
course.
that. Like, I totally like want to honor that, but it was just interesting to me how much power, like, and not a good type of power that these women had, you know. Um, it was very passive aggressive, very, very passive aggressive. And
I,
that's
I
just,
tend to think that power always corrupts. So, especially in a cliquish and using God as the reference just adds a whole nother level to it.
right, right, exactly. Yeah.
So the other question I had for you, which I think I know the answer to because I am thriving like crazy, but can you thrive outside of religion?
You know, my simple answer to that is yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, I feel like there's so much more for me. There's so much more freedom. Like, we call it like the desert, because when you first, or when Karl and I first came out of the church, it felt very, I mean, you talk about isolating. You feel like you're the only one that's kind of going through this deconstruction, or this really, really desert like experience where it's just like you don't see any like life, and you don't know what you think, you don't know what you believe, you've got to
Mhm.
reevaluate all this stuff, and it does seem like it's very dry and barren and scary and vast. And but we're learning that spending time here, we have gotten to know so many beautiful people. I mean, people that truly like love like Jesus, if that's what we're focused on is Jesus. Like I feel like the people that we've met in the desert emulate him so much more. Um,
It's so odd because I am so much more free to love my
yes,
neighbor
yes,
than I ever was taught in
yes.
church.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, you could technically, and I think a lot of us have heard that, love the sin or hate the sin, but it's like, mm, you know, so like I can love you, but not your lifestyle. I can love you, but not your addiction. I can love you, but not your skin color. And I'm like,
There should be no buts.
there
John
should,
Catlett says that he attributes it to your voice. I love you, but I hate your voice.
oh,
And you can't say that.
yeah,
You can't
yeah,
love someone if there is an if or a but,
you're
unless
right.
that is abuse. If you're, I love you except you abuse me, that could be somewhere.
Mhm.
But you can't say I love you if you weren't this way. It's just antichrist. It just drives me crazy.
And that's where the conflict for me was. I just
Yeah.
was like, it just wasn't making any sense to me, and I couldn't make it make any sense. And just contradictions um in scripture and things like that, I couldn't make those things make sense to me. But and yet I didn't feel that I had a voice to speak up and question those things either. And that's another thing that I feel like the desert or being outside of organized religion, that's a place we can thrive, or I can thrive as well. As I can ask those questions of people and they're not afraid, and they're not going, you are going down a slippery slope, you're going to go to hell, you better turn or burn kind of thing. They're just, yeah, that's a great question. Let's think about that. Let's talk, what do you, and for somebody to actually say to me, I don't know, what do you think? And be able to sit with whatever I think and not worry about my eternal salvation based on my answer,
Yeah.
So in that respect, I'm absolutely thriving outside of organized religion. And I have no plans. I mean, I never say never, but I
Mhm.
have no plans of going back.
Yeah, I don't either.
Um, yeah, there's
If I found
nothing.
something perfect, I would, but
Yeah,
yeah,
if I felt that I was safe there, and that I was heard there, and that I was truly listened to, loved, if people cared about my healing, then
um,
maybe.
yeah.
But yeah, I just have not been able to find those things.
The interesting part that I realized with you talking was that my faith actually increased when I could ask those
Yeah.
questions. And that's again another antithesis of the church these days, because they don't want you to ask the questions. They want you to, remain in your faith and remain strong. But not being able to ask the questions made me run.
Right.
Being able to ask the questions, to philosophize about it, look into all the theology, brought me back to say,
Mhm.
okay, there is something out there that would be worthy, um, to have that safe space. And that's why I like the name so much, because it's like a desert. It's like a
Mhm.
desert out there where you're screaming, hey, is anybody else out
Right.
there?
But
What
then
can
you
I do?
find people out there, and actually, like, the thing I love the most about the book, and about before we even wrote the book and got the cover, but is that flower that's
Yeah.
blooming. Because we a lot of times think there is no life in the desert. And if you can be patient with yourself, and you can reach out to people like you, people like me, people like Karl, and so many others, you will find so much rich, beautiful life and growth in the desert. You really will. And believe me, I was one that never thought I would find that. I thought I was going to be like miserable the rest of my life. Yeah.
Yeah, been there. Hi,
Yeah.
Carl. How are you? He's here in spirit.
Yes.
Any
Yeah.
comments, Carl? Can you chat with us via text? So, um, what what do you suppose? Because we can only assume or suppose
Right.
Jesus and the church would have to do with each other today. I am amazed that how congruent our times are with his.
Mm,
And the Pharisaical philosophies and the rule of the church and the power of the politics. It's like, oh, dear Lord, we're 2,000 years.
hmm
Nothing has changed
hmm
here except we have
Right.
technology now. What do you think about all of that? What would Jesus even be allowed in?
Yeah. No, I think the church would welcome him in. I don't know if he'd be allowed to stay. But
Good point.
he would be welcome,
We need to
because
change it.
we always like get excited when new people come to visit, don't we? The
Yeah.
church,
Look to
so
your
but
neighbor. Say hello every
right.
Sunday.
But I think I I tend to believe that he would absolutely challenge so many of the things going on in our churches today. The nationalism, like you said, the politics, just like when we were talking about just, cattiness with whatever group of people that may be, abuse in the church. I think if Jesus is who he says he is, he would stand up against that. And I'm not sure how long he would be
Live
welcome in the church
or live. I
or
mean,
live. I mean,
yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, as you're talking, I'm seeing scriptures of the Gospels of, him saying, you can't treat people this way. And
right.
the Pharisees saying, how dare you speak with someone or eat with someone who hadn't washed their hands? I mean,
Hmm.
all of these things that we're seeing
Yep.
today.
Yep.
I mean, that's what started my deconstruction was saying to the church, Jesus is going to tear down your veils again.
Hmm.
How dare you do this?
Right. Exactly.
Um, Michelle says, hello, Michelle. Yeah, that's a really good point. Why are people worshiping him?
Hmm.
Never asked that. Very good point.
That
So,
is a
what
good.
did you and Carl find in writing the book? What did you think that Jesus would do?
I'm sorry. Can you ask that question again?
In the process of writing the book, did you come up with a conclusion as to what you think Jesus would do or how he would react?
I mean, I don't know that. I know we have a chapter in there like, would Jesus go to church? And I kind of said exactly what I said here, to the extent where I think he would go, because I think Jesus is going to be wherever people are, and especially wherever hurting people are. Um, but I'm not sure that we ever got, a definitive answer or anything like that. But yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one for sure.
I think it's tricky because of the spin. I think it's tricky because of Paul.
Yeah.
But based on the Gospels, at least in my opinion, it's very
Mhm.
clear because it's like I said, we are completely repeating the times of Jesus as
Yeah.
far as the church and their control and all of that. And we saw the way that he reacted. The irony is that he called for no violence, and there is the one about the sword, but he told his disciples not to be violent, and there is so much violence that's coming from the church at this point.
Oh, absolutely.
So I guess it depends on which Jesus you follow as to what
Right.
the answer would be, right?
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of versions of
There are.
this and
My
God. Yeah.
perspective of American Jesus is a complete and total asshole, and I want nothing to
Right.
do with him.
Yes. Yes.
Anyone wrapped in a flag with a gun, I don't want anything to do with, and I don't think that Christianity would exist if that's who Jesus was 2,000
Uh,
years ago.
exactly. Exactly. Yep.
So where do you stand now that this book is out? Has anything changed? I know that I'm going through the editing process of my own and I'm seeing, oh my God, I don't feel this way anymore. You went back to it after 2
Yeah.
years now that it's published. Are you still feeling the same? Is there anything out there?
Yeah, actually, I would have to say, I feel like my growth has been more in the realm of like spirituality. I still am trying to figure out who, um, especially God is. Like, I struggle with that because of the image that has been put upon most of us all of our lives. Um, but here's the thing about being where I am now. 3 years ago, or even as much as 5 years ago, when we first like decided we can't do this anymore.
Mhm.
Like I shared earlier, I was very like distraught, thought this is it. This, I had no clue. Like, am I, like, if I died tomorrow, am I going to go to hell? All those things that bring so much anxiety. And I feel like now the growth that I've seen in myself is more along the lines of, um, like, I don't worry about things like that anymore. It's more of a, just, I'm on a spiritual journey, and being willing to, go where that takes me, ask questions. I don't feel like I need to arrive at a specific destination. I don't feel like I need to be done or have all the answers or do all the right things. There's a lot more freedom, I think. And I think there's a lot more beauty too in that freedom too. I don't
I
feel
used to
so
be, I
go
used to be
ahead.
so afraid to say I don't know. And
Right,
now it's so empowering because
right,
it's like, okay, well, let's find out that answer. Let's see, let's talk about it. I mean, to say I don't know, it would in the church meant that you didn't have faith, that you weren't a
right.
Christian, that you weren't walking with God. And from my point, I mean, someone said the other day, you have to admit, of course, on social media, you have to admit when you're wrong. And I said, oh my God, I love being wrong because then I learn. And I think that
Exactly.
fear, that is put into the church, especially now, of, if people start asking questions, they're going to leave. Well, that's what's happening. And then if we fail to answer those questions with it's okay not to know, I think the mass exodus is going to continue.
But are they leaving because they're asking questions, or because people are, number one, not answering their questions, or number two,
Mm.
um, you know, making them feel some sort of shame or whatever because they're asking those questions? Here's
Yeah,
the thing: I teach second grade, and part of what we want kids to do is ask questions.
yeah,
We want them to be inquisitive and ask questions. And something happens along the way where we become adults out in this huge world where we could be asking so many questions, and all of a sudden we're not supposed to ask any questions. I think that's interesting. You know, I
yeah. And I think it's ego. I think it's all ego because so many people. I mean, granted, when someone says that I am wrong about something, I may get a hot flash, my stomach may drop, and
sure.
more of like a fear. But again, if I'm always right, then I don't learn anything, and I know that I am completely stupid on so many things. None of us know if there is a God. None of us know if anything. So to question that, I think, is a step in faith.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
especially again without the shame and everything else that the church brings on it to
Hmm.
and as far as questions. It's like it's almost if you say that you don't know, they're accusing you of being stupid, a stupid heretic.
Hmm. Absolutely. Well, yeah, I agree. I was going to say something else and I totally lost what I was going to say, but I agree with you. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So, like, so much of it is because they have to preserve the organization.
Yeah.
So, you
Business
know,
model.
I was reading Michelle's comment about it's a way of keeping control. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, it 100% is about control and preserving the organization. And I think that was the hardest thing because church is marketed to us as this place where you can go and you can, find healing or, find
Hospital
love
of the
and
soul.
acceptance. And really the bottom line is the organization and
Yeah.
preserving that organization.
Well, it's supposed to be the hospital for the soul, and it turns out to be a multi-level marketing,
Exactly. Yeah.
fake healthcare that is just going to make you feel worse about yourself. Again, not all churches. We are not talking about all
Right.
churches out there. We are not talking about all faiths or beliefs. We are
Right.
addressing the systemic problems
Mhm.
in the American churches at this point.
Mhm.
If you go to a church where you don't have this problem, more power to you. Write us, tell us where you go. We will definitely want to inquire and see what beauty this church offers. But to not address a problem that is going on, at least predominantly in our country, is not being the caregivers that our faith requires us to be.
Right. And one thing Carl and I say, because people have told us, well, that doesn't happen at my church. That's never happened to me. And we do say that's wonderful. However, if you are part of the church, part of a church, you should care that there are churches out there that this
Exactly.
is happening in.
Exactly.
Um, Carl has a great example of that. I cannot think of what it is. But anyway, basically, if you knew that something was going on, like if I'm a school teacher, and if I knew that the school down the road was um, doing something that was not right for kids, even though that's not my school, I need to care about that because
Exactly.
kids are being hurt. You know,
Exactly.
so that's not his example, but that's the only one I could think of. But it's similar to that.
Yeah, I mean, if we're supposed to love our neighbor, we're supposed to, care about other people, and to say,
Right.
well, if it's not happening in our church, there's not a problem. I mean, that's kind of what's going on in our society. If we don't feel it, then it doesn't exist.
Mhm.
That's not love.
Right.
And
Right.
Anna has a great point.
Mhm.
How is anyone supposed to learn, supposed to
Yep.
grow in relationship if we don't explore, wonder, and imagine? I mean, I wasn't taught how to love. I have been trying to learn how to love ever since I
Mhm.
left the church.
Right.
So, it's because that was not a source. I knew how to separate myself from sin. I knew how to separate myself from others, but I
Right.
was never taught how to, even from my parents, to, get through tough times and the loving way of doing this.
Mhm.
So, what would you, now that you have started this desert church, it's a church, right?
No, it's just we have a Facebook group.
Okay.
Yeah, called the Desert Sanctuary. Yeah. So,
Sanctuary. Okay.
yep, it's just a Facebook group. Yep.
Now that you're here, now that you have all of this, what would be your advice? What are you doing differently?
For me, because I did feel so alone for so long, um, I would love for people just to like to hear their stories and to have them know that their story is sacred and whatever has happened, however they, like we've been talking about, have however they've been hurt or shamed inside the church, their voice needs to be heard. Sometimes it's just talking to somebody. I personally have heard of other pastors' wives who have felt the same thing that I have for many years of ministry. I don't know them, but I've heard from like my sister knows, you know, her husband's son's pastor's wife, kind of thing. Um, but I wouldn't mind having like conversations with people and like just sitting with people as they try to. I think that's just my heart's desire is just to be there because I know what it feels like to feel like nobody's there for you. Um, but that is what, we want the Desert Sanctuary to be a safe place where people can go and they can ask their questions or, just seek whatever they need to seek. Um,
That's why
it's
I have this show. It's my
yeah,
church.
yeah,
To hear
absolutely.
everybody's stories, just to be able to bond with people, to learn from them. That's church to me.
It's so interesting coming out of organized religion, how I can hear other people's stories and they could be telling me about another religion or no religion. Maybe
Mhm.
they're atheist, and that does not scare me anymore. But
Mhm.
inside that organization of religion, I I was so scared to hear anything other than
Really?
Christianity. Oh yeah, because I
Wow.
just thought, what's going to happen if I hear something else?
Oh,
Well, it
wow.
might open my mind now, that I think about it. It's like, well, it kind of opens your mind to other things. And I don't have to be afraid that, like, I'm going to be sucked into something. Like,
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
I was talking to somebody just the other day, and they're just like, you have that power within you. And I'm just like, wow, I never really thought about that. But like, I never thought that inside the church setting. I always thought, I'm going to be led astray. I'm going to be led astray. I'm going to be led astray. And really, it's like, you know what? It's all good. And
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your story, whatever that story is.
So much fear.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just not a really healthy way to live.
No, I mean, when there's a meme going around right now, when your theology is fear, you're going to, fear God. When your theology is love, you're going to want to love more.
Mhm.
And, I mean, in doing my degree, I found it so insane how much in the Old Testament they hated incense. Like it's all over. Like, don't you burn that incense because it's demonic. And it was like, incense, really? I mean, the things that they have feared for thousands of years, we can look at now and go,
Yeah.
come on, come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Like,
It's interesting. The first time we ever like burned sage,
uh-huh.
it's like I that actually calmed me. And
Yeah,
of course that's like, oh wait, that's how you get rid of evil spirits and stuff like that. And I'm just like, I don't know, it's just calming to me. It's just relaxing.
natural,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
It
It's kind of,
cleanses the air. So if you have evil spirits around you, I guess that says more
I
about you.
guess, I mean, hey, that's a bonus.
Yeah,
You
yeah. Let's do this.
know?
So what are you guys doing next?
Oh wow. I mean, Uh, I'm sure Carl will continue to write. I'm kind of a reluctant writer. I mean, like he was very patient with me because, like I said, he wanted me to, write this alongside of him. I, it took a while for me to kind of come on board, but, um, for me, I just want to, like, I always just think I just want to be available. I just want to be available, whether that be on like the desert sanctuary or I don't know what that really looks like. I'm also, for me personally, like continue to work on my spiritual journey, but also my healing. I just think that's gonna be, kind of a life, not maybe not a lifelong thing, but I feel like once you heal, then maybe there's some other layers that kind of peel back.
Yeah.
You need to work at healing that. So, ooh, lavender. Yeah, I love lavender. I decided this year in my classroom I was going to put in a plug-in air freshener because I mean I know that's probably chemicals and stuff like that, but I can't burn anything in my classroom. So, but it is
Another calming
amazing.
source.
Yeah, it's amazing how it kind of calms the classroom. Like
Yeah.
that's my intent. But yeah, so that I mean, my first career is teaching. So I love being a grandma. Like all those things bring me so much joy. If there's a book down the line for me, with another one with Carl, then, I'm sure we can discuss that. But Carl is always like writing. I don't want to speak for him, but he's always got a book in the works and yeah. But a lot of it is we just want to be present on the desert sanctuary and just, like I said, just have our hearts available to people, which is a funny thing for me to say because I literally never thought I would put my heart out there again. But I
Yeah.
feel like the desert has been so healing. And that's what I want for other people who have been wounded by organized religion.
Well, and like I said, it's so aptly named because you do feel like you are alone in a desert when you leave. I mean, social media has changed so much of that. when I started finding and found the term deconstruction, it was so rewarding and so comforting to say, okay, here I left that, but these are the people I've been looking for all along.
Right. Absolutely. Yes.
Thinkers and people who want to love. I had a
Yeah.
show on atheism, and they said, give me love, but don't talk about your God. And I'm like, I am totally okay with that. That is where I stand.
Yeah. One of our really good friends is an atheist, and he has called Karl every week since he had his stroke just to check on him.
Some
Has
of the
any
best people I know are.
has anyone from any of the churches
Oh,
that we've
wow.
pastored? Not one. Not one.
That says so much.
It says a lot. It says a lot. Yeah. I mean, it speaks volumes. It really
It,
does.
it does.
Yeah.
So, Anna, coming back to the practices we grew up with, like herbs and santeros
I
and
think so.
candles, brought me closer to God than when I thought it was evil for wanting to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the amazing things within the last couple years that we like to do is sit on our porch, and we light those lanterns that use oil outside,
Mhm.
and I love just to stare at the flame and just
Yeah,
watch it dance. I mean, even your fire back behind you, it's mesmerizing. And yeah, you're right, Anna. A lot of times we think, oh, you're being mesmerized, you're being caught up by, evil spirits or whatever, but there's actually a beauty in that. There's such a beauty in watching just things that are nature, um, just dance and just be.
it always strikes me as so odd that so many believers in God hate so much of his creation.
Right.
Like
Right.
sage, lavender, all of these things are here
Mhm.
and are gifts to us, but
Yeah.
yet they're labeled as demonic or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It blows my mind. Hello, Zanker. That has got to be you. It's got to be Mike Zanker throwing in the jokes. Who's a herb? He's my weekly heckler and partner in Moment of Love. So, I
Uh,
throw him all the love I can.
that's funny.
So, as we close the show, any good tips that you can give our audience and really what to put out there? I mean, we obviously want everybody to go buy the book. It is on Amazon. Is it
Yep.
anywhere else yet?
I don't, that's a great question. I know it's on Amazon and Kindle. You can get it
Okay.
on Kindle. Yeah.
Okay.
So, for sure. Also, I think you can order it on Karl's website, which is karlforehand.com. And if you order it there, I don't know. This is what's hard not having him on here because I don't really know. But if you order it on there, I think we ship it from our house, so we'll sign
Okay.
it for you. So
Well, there you go. Everybody go
Karl,
to karlforehand.com. The
yeah,
address is there.
yeah.
Here is the book.
Mhm.
Any more questions from our audience? Oh, yes,
I
very, very good point. We are all connected to nature. In fact, one of the things that I say is our emancipation from nature really emancipated our us from God and the spirit and all of those things too. So separate us. We're ants with egos anyway.
yeah.
So to go ahead and say that we are special, it just takes us away from everything that we're supposed to love.
Yeah. And actually nature is, and I think somebody else made this comment too, but nature is what brings me closest to
Yeah.
like God. If, and I'm still wrestling with that, and I'm okay that I'm wrestling with that. But I feel like when I sit in nature, and I do love that, I agree with that. We are all connected. We are
Yeah.
all connected. We are so much more connected than not. So
And losing that connection just separates us from God
yeah,
and each other.
right.
It's so easy to be an asshole. I mean, I'm seeing this all over the place. It's like, don't you know that the goodness is what's hard, and that's why we're supposed to do it?
Yeah.
And that's the one, leaving religion has done for me, and
Yep.
it's so ironic.
Yep. It is. It is, but it's so true. It's so true.
So, any final words and where can people find you?
Okay. So, well, really, any final words? I just want to encourage people to just keep seeking. Don't let anybody define when you've asked too many questions or when you have done too much seeking. I say the more, the better.
Yeah.
So, um, as far as finding me, I really I don't have a whole like Carl's at karlforehand.com. I don't have anything like that. I'm on Facebook. We're in the Desert Sanctuary, which is on Facebook. And we both kind of post things in there. I call that my safe place because being in small towns, I don't post a lot of controversial things, especially around the church or organized religion on my personal Facebook page, but I will post things in the Desert Sanctuary just because it's a safer place for me to um, be who I am. So, but other
Safe
than that,
social media is mandatory.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And Carl's really good about monitoring that so that, I mean, he has had to, people are not being kind. Like we want to make sure it's a safe space for people because deconstruction, as we've talked about here, is really, really hard when you first,
Yeah,
leave organized religion because you do feel so alone. So we want people to have that safe space. So,
good.
yeah.
It's so awesome. So, we want to send everybody to go buy the book and go to the website. And Laura, I want to thank you so much for jumping in. I know Carl. Hey, Carl, you're in the background somewhere working your butt off and providing. So that's awesome. But any final words before I kick you backstage?
I just have had a blast. Thank you for making this. I was sharing with you before we got on. I was really nervous. Carl's like, "Oh, you'll do great." I was just like, "What? I've never done one of these by myself about the book." So, but I couldn't have asked for a better opportunity. You've made it
Fantastic.
very lovely for me. So thank you so much. And it's so awesome to meet you.
Likewise. Thank you so much. It was an honor to have you on the
Oh,
show.
thank you. Thank you.
I will end the show and then I'll see you backstage in a minute.
Okay.
Oh, another fabulous show. Thank you so much, Laura. And Carl is in the background listening. Be sure to go to Amazon or to karlforehand.com to buy his book. For next week's show, we will be chatting about the processing the loss of death. It's going to be another heavy topic, but will provide a path to healing and peace. We all experience death, and so we're going to teach you how to get through it in a healthy manner. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe, and thank you all for watching and participating. If you enjoyed the show, please consider sharing it with your friends. We are headed back to the VIP. Become a member so you can chat too. Go to my website and hit the support tab. Don't forget to check out A Moment of Love on Facebook and my site. I'll see you next week. Walk in love.